So hello, welcome to this third of 4 Design at Work conversations. Thank you for joining us virtually at Pier 17 in San Francisco. I am Joya. I'm the CEO of Swissnex San Francisco, which is the innovation outpost of Switzerland, a country which is also home to some really great designers. And just like so many others, we have pivoted from holding our events in our huge space on the waterfront in San Francisco to experimenting with public conversations through digital channels. And now we're not just asking ourselves what's the future of how we might gather in the future, but really how might we live and work going forward, and want to take a long-term perspective. And this is why we partnered up with Vitra a few months ago, the Swiss design firm, to explore the questions at the center of the future of work and how we might rethink our workspace environments. Vitra is one of the world's leading design firms based in Switzerland, and they are pushing the boundaries of the design discipline since 80 years. And they are also our partner in crime when it comes to rethinking our own space here at Pier 17 in San Francisco. So as mentioned, this is the third of 4 monthly conversations hosted by Vitra's Future of Work Trendscout, Raphael Gielgen, and has been featuring a cast of high-level foresight thinkers. And these conversations actually offer insights into some of the concepts that Raphael has built throughout his career, visiting more than 100 companies a year until the pandemic hit the office world. And now he's doing that just like so many of us virtually. And today we have the honor to welcome Jen Panasik to this conversation. She's a partner and managing director at IDEO in San Francisco. And I will let Raphael introduce her. But what caught my attention is what sounds like an obsession with the number 9. So I hope she's going to tell us more about it at some point during this talk. And I also want to raise your attention to our last talk, the next one, the next Design at Work talk with Matthew Bucher. He's the Senior Director and Global Real Estate Design Leader at Salesforce, and that event will happen on December 10th. So please mark your calendars for that last edition of the Design at Work conversations with Raphael. So now, with no further ado, I'm happy to give this virtual stage to Raphael. Rafa, please take it away.
Good, so thank you. Yeah, hello all to you. Today, I'm first time doing this conversation at my home in Bavaria. And now, hello to the Bay Area. Hello, Jen, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
So, to the audience, by introducing Jen, I heard something interesting in an interview. She is the eye of IDEO. And I believe during my questions, we learned so much from Jen about her approach. And so I want to immediately start with our conversation. So Jen, let us know a little bit, where did you spend the last 34 weeks when the office was closed or the studio?
Yeah, so thank you, Raphael, and hello. I'm so honored to be here. It's really nice to have a time just to chat with you about these kinds of topics that I find really interesting, and of course, really interesting to IDEO. So I am coming to you from what probably looks like a spaceship now. The lighting is changing, but I'm actually in the attic of my home, where I have been sitting for so many weeks and working remotely as many have, and finding kind of day by day the new ways of which I try to make this more believable, even though I would say most of the time I'm at odds with having to continue to do it day by day. But yeah, I'm coming to you from the attic of my home in San Francisco.
As a designer, or like with the mind of IDEO, with this user centricity, did you immediately start when the pandemic started to think and act as a designer, like how to design my daily routines and all these things?
Yeah.
Or was it more a personal story then?
Yeah, I mean, I think that true to the nature of IDEO and our sort of culture, it was really what we were doing as an organization all together to figure it out. There was a couple of different, of course, Slack channels dedicated to workplace, like show us what you've done. a lot of sharing of that kind of thing. And then I think personally, everybody was sort of figuring out for themselves what was it that they needed. And then we all started to understand, right? It's kind of this typical design process where you're going through the discovery phase of what are the unmet needs, and how do we understand those if we can't be with people in their homes to understand what it is. So we had a lot of different channels by which we were learning from our fellow coworkers about what was working and not working. And then how can we as an organization support their needs at home? And so then it became a process of making sure everybody was getting large packets of Post-its and boards if they needed them, comfortable chairs and stands and monitors. And I was saying this earlier, and it kind of gets to, I think, a lot of culture building, which is you have the things, I guess there's this cultural iceberg metaphor that's used often, where the things at the tip of that iceberg, things that we call out or notice, are for IDEO especially, it's our Post-its and boards and Sharpies and all of these tactical things. It's our coffee. It's the stuff that people talk about when they talk about the things that show up. But there's the below the iceberg stuff of like, what really then does all of that give us in terms of a sense of a place and belonging and all of that. And so when we were in the early days of the pandemic and everybody was getting their Post-its and boards and monitors and all of these different tools to help make it a little bit easier at home, there was certainly the like, oh great, I have these things again and these feel familiar and I know them and I need them and I know, they're the tangible things. But those things arrived at our home by two of our beloved facilities guys, Juan and James. And it was actually when those guys showed up at your door that you felt like you were still a part of this place again, right? Yeah. Like you got to see their faces and masks, but it was one of these really beautiful moments of remembering who we are as a collective, as a group, and how we care for one another. And it became sharing photos of when Juan and James would show up with your deliveries. A really beautiful moment that kind of reminds us all of who we all are a part of.
Wow. So thank you for these insights. That was really inspiring. And when you shared the story, when your colleagues was at the door, I really was like, oh, it must be heartwarming. So what was your biggest learning for yourself? Maybe we say, I never thought about that, or I totally underestimate that.
I think so. Wow, a couple things. Really, really quickly, and I think for two reasons. I was surprised at how close we could feel really quickly as a global company. Again, I'm talking about I'm based in San Francisco. In fact, we're on Pier 28, which isn't too far from Swissnex. I used to walk over to enjoy the events there. And Pier 28 is this beautiful building, and we all get to see each other. But of course, that was just one of our locations around the globe. But coming into this context and working in this way, it really immediately there felt like a more instant channel to the rest of our organization around the world. And partly that's because now we're all through digital means and talking to one another. But we also had an event that was meant mainly for the leaders of our company that would convene once a year into one location, and everybody would fly in from different parts. And, it was more of our enterprise leadership team that would be a part of this. And really quickly, it became not an event for just that group, but actually for the entire organization. So we scrapped the idea of just the whole event being for that leadership group. That became like a meeting or two. But we ended up doing this thing called May Frenzy. And May Frenzy was basically a series of shares from all across the globe from different IDEOers who had, one guy taught us how to make like the best omelet in the world. Another guy had a dance party in his kitchen. There were all of these different events that all of a sudden I'm dancing with somebody in Munich while I'm, learning a new tool from a colleague of mine that I've never met before. And because that happened in May, it kind of instantly through all of this connected us in a way that I'd never experienced before in my 14 plus years at the company.
Interesting point. Is there anything in particular out your perspective at IDEO you would love now to work on? Like that would be a challenge you would love to tackle?
Yeah, well, there's many projects that I would love to tackle, but in connection to this this topic, if you will, it's work that we are doing because, you know, we were talking about this in the beginning, that so much of this working context has changed the idea of work for people, and people are discovering things that are working really well and things that aren't. And so a lot of the work that we're doing for clients in understanding the future of their work is actually getting at those unmet needs, or the needs of people that have changed over time. You know, we can't really rely on things that we've known from the past. And that's true of all innovation, right? It's one thing to understand the past. That's a good data point and it's interesting, but in order to think about the future, you have to look at a really broad, diverse variation of inputs and new ones. You know, it's often why we talk to people who are at the edges of the thing we're trying to understand, because they kind of show this emergent behavior that we think is going to happen more so in the future. And we're all living in these new contexts of which then new insights, new understanding, new needs are arising. And so we've been helping our clients understand from their employees' point of view, especially, how are these things changing for them, and then how are they going to have to adapt and set up the right conditions for them to get at the work they need to do at the end of the day. And that's different for everybody, you know. Like, so for instance, at IDEO, you know, we've always been a place about creativity and inspiration. Collaboration has been part of our DNA from the get-go. So our space has always had to engender that and help promote those things. But more so in the future, like we become places of learning, which is something we've already started with, but where we're growing more into, of which our workplace and work situations have to help manifest and grow a sense of learning because of the kind of work that we do with our clients. They're learning for the first time to work in a different kind of process, a design process, and that's a real learning moment for them. And on top of that, you know, we're a place where people build their careers, whether they do that within and stay with IDEO, or they come and go to other organizations. In fact, I think your last guest was Claude. I think he had a stint at IDEO as well at some point in his past. So how we engender learning is a big part of how we'll think about our future workplace and space. But that's us. So, you know, helping others means doing that discovery of understanding what it is that serves them best.
So that links me perfect to my question now, entering a little bit the future. In 2030, the most successful companies are driven by curiosity, creativity, I believe, to endeavor the unpredictable and maybe to see the unknown. What could companies, organizations learn in general from IDEO?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of what we endeavor to do is to be a place of that's welcoming and open and diverse and inclusive. There's equity built into not only the roles that we have, but the way that we treat people when they come to our place of work. And the way that we are trying to get at that is like what you said. I think curiosity and openness is a really big factor. And so we're trying to, and we haven't solved that, by the way. We're learning and growing along with others. But the way that we're doing it is by giving a real platform and stage to the entire organization. And there's lots of different ways that we're doing that, but certainly it's about understanding what it is that they're coming up against, and then being flexible enough and committed enough to actually do something about that. I think, it's one thing to try to learn from your organization and have a nice bulleted list of things that you want to try and change. But if you don't have commitment from especially the top layers of the organization, and that you actually put those out more publicly, then no one's ever really going to be committed to change. So I would hope that people could learn from us at least how we're finding our footing around how to be a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. Again, we are not done, and we haven't even we haven't solved that. That's going to be something that's ongoing for us and probably for many others. But I hope that we could teach, or at least share, our current understanding about how to do that well, which again, being curious, being open, hearing things, but also then doing something with it, putting it forward.
Thank you. To the audience, you could leave your questions also in the Q&A. I will look at that and will grab some questions out also for Jen. There is another point. So what is leading your company? What is leading your personal to some of these game-changing ideas?
Right. So, one thing that comes to mind is when we're trying to think about the future and think about new ways of approaching a problem in an innovative sense, is to allow yourself to imagine a future that probably sounds pretty out there or silly or a little bit naive, just as a way to kind of try things on. So, we do use tools, lots of different tools to get at that, to provoke it, to prompt it with our clients and with our designers and with whatever stakeholders are part of our problem set. And design fiction is one that we've employed along the way. That's kind of fun. Yeah. Actually, I can show maybe a little prompt here.
Yeah, do.
Okay. All right. Let's see if I can choose the right one.
Curious what it is.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So this is just a prompt. This is something that we would use in early stages of discovery, of maybe even like in a kickoff kind of situation with our client, just to get them a little comfortable with being uncomfortable, thinking about things that they might get scared at. They might say, "Oh, is this your solution?" And we have to remind them that no, this is a prompt for discussion. And one thing that we love to do is use something tangible as a way to get at the abstract. So when you think about the future, it's quite abstract, right? It's all very ethereal. And when you're having a conversation with your client and with your team, sometimes we're saying words that we think we understand, but everybody kind of has their own different interpretation. So getting something that is tangible, visual, something that you can react to, whether it's negative or positive, is just super helpful to kind of ground you in this abstraction. So this is an example of a postcard from the future. And this one is showing a couple of things. It's reimagining a kind of workplace that might actually spend more of an investment on you and your place, wherever you are, rather than spending that in the actual workplace itself. So on this side of me, you're seeing lots of different home environments that have been, quite designed and lovely. And what if there's a future where the workplace investment from an organization is put at your home? So what would then the media say about you? And so that this postcard is both showing some inspiration and then thinking about what the media might say about that idea.
I like the idea.
Yeah, it's a fun one, right? Like I wouldn't mind having a couple extra dollars to make this attic of mine a little bit more enjoyable.
I will figure that out next time when I do a session with customers. So yeah. I love this kind of approach.
Oh, good. Yeah, and so it's really just like, your first reaction might be like, what do you mean? We're going to give people money to build out their own spaces, or we're going to give them like a loan from the company to potentially retrofit their home in order for it to be a real office. Like that sounds kind of crazy. That, you know, it feels a little far out, but try it on for a second. Why does that feel so far off? What would make it potentially better? Like build on the idea and just try it on for a while and see how that works. Where's another one here? This one here. Yeah, so what if your home, or what if your workplace became a destination like Disneyland, where it was completely blown out and fantastical, and you only went there maybe once or twice a year, but when you went there, it was a spectacle. It was really, really something that you might get from that kind of a destination like Disneyland, right? What would that feel like and be like, and what would they say about your new office? So again, these are just prompts. These are just ways for us to get the conversation going, to point at something. Usually what we find is there's something that sticks from a conversation or a word, and that keeps getting referred to time and time again. And these are just little tools that help. And again, they are not the answers at all. They might spark some bit of the answer in the future, but that's how we help clients and ourselves as designers, right? Some of our design fiction work actually never goes to the client explicitly or is used in a workshop environment or kickoff or whatever it might be, but they're to help us as a team just kind of get out of our heads a little bit.
Talking about the future of work, you could not, so there's always now a big topic, that is the topic about climate change. And since 2 years, there is this word planetcentricity.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of, you think about user centricity, but there is also the planet. Do you think, or is planet centricity in general something what is part of the core, how you act? Or do you believe that in future everything will shift from user centricity in this more holistic perspective?
Well, I love that. I love that would be the way that people would start, center their kind of problem solving and imagine that that's what we could attain. I love that. What it makes me think of, it's really top of mind for a lot of leaders who have been flying all over the globe in order to make meetings and be in contact with clients. And I mean, one thing that helps is having a global organization that you can then lean on your global partners to be more direct and in contact. But I hope it does become that, because one of the things I've noticed in this working context that's very different, because people aren't flying around all over the earth and hurting the earth and doing so, is that everybody shows up for meetings now. It's a really big difference. So getting a meeting, first of all, is much easier. People are available, it seems more. There's not like, oh no, I'm traveling for those 2 weeks, whatever it might be. And so not only is it better for the planet, it actually is it's so much better for the work. The kind of collaboration that we're getting from everybody, from our own organization plus our client partners, has been at an all-time high because they're not doing those, they're not flying all over the place. So I do hope this is one of the things that we can hold on to, is that being in person doesn't necessarily have some external value to it. And because that has been a notion in the past, that if you show up, that means that you're more dedicated. That has some other kind of a value to it. And so then of course that means that we're jumping on planes, we're spending weeks away from family, we're doing things that we have to do as a part of, like, that's our job. But if we got more comfortable in the future with the fact that us talking right now can be as productive and useful in our conversations and moving things forward, then I think we would greatly reduce, the ways of which we're affecting the environment. on top of that, there's that version of the planet to care about. And then there's the version of the things that we put in the world and how we take care of understanding like the right materiality and, our dedication to a circular economy. And those are all facets of work that we do and are bringing, not as like, oh, this is a circular project. It's that this is a principle that we have to ask ourselves through everything that we're creating.
You run a big team. What do you believe? What changed in 10 years from now? How to empower employees in the future?
Yeah, I mean, this is true for me today in running a team that I think will only persist in the future. Is it's about agency, right? It's empowering an employee. It's about giving them the autonomy and the choice of what they get to be a part of and what they want to eventually do with their career with you. And a big part of how we work is understanding the kinds of things that our individual designers are really passionate about doing, the kinds of work that they want to be growing in their own portfolio that changes over time, and then connecting them with those things. One of the things that gets me the most excited about the work that I do, and I know I'm a managing director and the word managing is in my title, but I do see myself as a designer of people's careers as a part of my role. And the thing that brings me the most joy is when I find a project that's a perfect fit for where I know a designer's goals are. And just a little highlight about that is we were working with a client recently, and we're on an interview with somebody in their organization who was really, really inspiring, awesome to hear from and talk to. And while we're listening, I'm getting a Slack from one of the designers on the team saying, "Thank you so much for letting me be on this project. I can't believe I get to be in this conversation right now. This is so exciting." And that was like, oh, okay. That, like, because not only was I feeling that same way in that conversation, it was so gratifying to know that I can find work and develop work for designers to really do their best work and get excited about. And I did that because I knew that what he was interested in, and I knew the kinds of things that would really stimulate his imagination around work and really motivate him. So having that understanding and having that kind of connection is really what drives me around growing the future employees, and I think it gets them really, really motivated around their work.
Let us talk a little bit about your studio. So even design studios are coming under pressure because new business models, they have a profound impact how studios are set up. So if you make a journey with you in 2030, so what would the perfect design studio then? How it would look like? How would it feel? Take us there and give us a short tour through your studio.
Oh, I love that. Well, I love our studio, so I'm going to try to think about how that
maybe it is the same, maybe it doesn't change.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things when you walk into our space, because it's this large industrial pier space that you probably would recognize if you were at Swissnex in San Francisco, is that it immediately brings you up. Like it's large and expansive, and you kind of go down a hallway, but when you come into the main studio space, it's big and broad.
And it is real, by the way. Still, you go in a real studio
one. Yeah, this is the real one. Do you want me to design for you the future?
No, it's up to you. It's up to you.
I could. So, okay, that in general, this sense of awe and expansiveness that you physically feel when you walk into a space, to me is, whatever future workspace that we would have in, would you say 2030? That I hope that remains, because it just sets a tone. It sets a tone every day when you walk in. Now, the pier is on the water. We have a very large view onto the water, and it's beautiful. So, I don't know that that's always going to be the case in the future, but having these kind of views and vistas that bring you up the second you walk in really sets the tone for where you're coming to spend the majority of your day. And I love that. The things that I hope would also remain in the future is that we work in small teams. And I do hope that this gathering of our teams in a space together happens in the future too. We're benefiting though, of course, from having a team that we can lean on across the entire globe right now. And so figuring out what that looks like, what this hybrid model of both in-person and remote together feels like without that remote person feeling left out, of course, is the goal. And that's something that we can prototype, right? It's like any kind of design process. When we come up with some new novel solutions, well, let's just try it. Let's not just imagine it. Again, let's get out of the abstract and into the tangible. So I would love to imagine a version of that feeling just as good as it does when we're together in person, but I'm not skeptical of it. I'm just wary of it. I want to see that work and make it actually feel the same for everyone. So that's one thing I would love to see. And then, the one thing that we have discovered by having a big open floor plan for so many years is that, and again, I was talking about, how can it be more of a place for learning? Well, learning doesn't just happen in the open. We need a lot more of our spaces to both like bring us together for collaboration in those moments, but then having a place to retreat and for some people to recharge and for some people just to have a bit of heads down space. And so I would imagine the studio of the future doing that. And then, we all sort of crave an ongoing stream of inspiration. And so I would love to see the studios of the future do that in bigger ways, more visual ways that are dynamic, that aren't static, that isn't like, oh, we made this great statement wall and it's gorgeous, but then it never changes over time.
Good point.
Yeah, I would love to see more of that.
Do you also believe that there would be in the future a proper digital twin or like a virtual studio or an entire virtual architecture? Think about these kids or young ones who are at Twitch TV gaming the entire day. Maybe they would prefer to live in an immersive environment, which is not real.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, one of those postcards in the future is a workplace that's just like that. Like, what would that look like and feel like? And, this is one of those things where I think we have to try it to know how that really works and feels. Like it might feel fine as an individual, but would it feel fine with everybody on the team? Will we still have that same sense of serendipity that tends to happen when we're together in person? And it's something to really watch out for. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed over these several months is the very efficient qualities that have come out. Everybody's getting their job done and using all of these digital tools at our disposal very, very creatively. Like it's not been about a twin necessarily, as just a different kind of version that's doing its own thing. And so it's got its own benefits. But the thing that I'm curious to see how it really progresses are the things that come up for us in the in-between moments. So, when we're on screen, we're very, again, it could be very efficient and getting our work done, and it becomes a little bit more binary. Where, when we're walking to lunch together after just having a meeting with the client and we're walking along the Embarcadero of San Francisco and something happens across the street that reminds us of something that we just talked about. And in that moment, I could say to my coworker, what if this? And it's that kind of exchange in the in-between moments that I think we've got to put some special attention around as we look to a future that will embody probably more hybrid presence and will view more technological tools at our disposal.
Like it. So you're also a partner, and to be a partner in these times, I think there is a lot of responsibility on you, and also the kind of duty you have to run a partner company like IDEO. What do you believe in this future of work? What are the major challenges ahead of us?
Yeah, so, I think first and foremost, making sure that we are building an environment that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive is one of our top priorities. And that is something that is a constant conversation, but it's also something that we're actively engaged in as partners, as an organization. And that's first and foremost. If people can't feel a sense of safety and belonging and inclusiveness in their workplace, then they're not going to do their best work, right? And on top of that, that's not the kind of feeling we'd ever want anybody to feel coming into our organization. So, that's top of mind. I think also there's such an understanding that we have from user-centered design that there is no one fits all, that we have to have and build systems that are adaptable and flexible. And we're designing those things all the time for our client partners in terms of their new products, brands, experiences, systems, organizations, whatever it is that we're helping them with. And that has to be true of our own business, of our own place of being, that we, I think give enough sense of the guardrails for people to play within, and then let them have some agency in making that their own. I think having a sense of responsibility or attachment or say in the kind of place that they get to come to every day feels really great. There's this metaphor we've used about, and it's not our own, but this notion of a traffic lights versus a traffic circle. And that traffic lights, again, are really binary. You know what to do. It's red, you stop. It's green, you go. And sometimes those kind of conditions create bad behavior. So I'm at a stop sign, I might go on my phone. Like it can, being so stringent can actually cause some bad behaviors. Yeah. Where, with the traffic signal, you understand that there's a bit of this collaboration that has to happen, that I know what I need to do in connection with the other person and the connection with the attributes on the road. And then I work it out myself around those guardrails. And so I think giving everybody a sense of enough structure is good. Like I think people feel grounded and anchored when they have some of these pillars that they can lean on and depend on, with enough agency to feel like they can make it partly theirs too.
There is, in this context, so the amount of change or the speed of change is really accelerating. And how you deal with this challenge today and maybe in the future, because it will accelerate more. How to prepare your employees for these things which are unpredictable.
Yeah. Well, I definitely wouldn't have predicted what we're doing now. That's for sure. I don't know that many, well, a few did, but preparing them, I think it's a good question. A big part of what we have to do anyway in our job, and anybody who's thinking about the future, is embracing ambiguity, right? That ambiguousness of what we endeavor into is not always going to have an answer to it, but that you can help build gut and intuition, support for going into that ambiguity, and helping, I think, our designers, understand how that can feel and look like. And they usually get it after, I think, doing work together. Like, oh, okay, like we took on this really, really tough challenge in the beginning, and there's no obvious answer. Like, you don't come to IDEO if you've got an obvious answer. You come to us when it isn't obvious and you can't see it and you need help getting there, right? So that means every one of our employees has to embrace that kind of unknowing. But all right, we've got a process that helps. That's one thing. We've got an outline, I would say, a sketch. I think a lot of people actually think of the design thinking process as something that's very, very linear and quite succinct. And I think what we've shown over the years is that it's about how you twist and turn it and make it your own and make it right for the problem that you're after, because every problem is different. So yeah, I think partly helping them feel the comfort and knowing that there are tools and that there is support in getting through that ambiguity really helps them embrace it a bit more. Yeah, I think, one thing that we've noticed is that the speed at which we do that might be changing in the future, because one of the things about working through ambiguity is you have to make decisions and move fast. And I think we're finding more and more that when we do that, we leave things out. We could leave things out. We could leave people behind. We could leave aspects out of the picture. And we're trying to be a lot more mindful about the speed at which we're working and the speed at which we're taking our clients along. Sometimes that speed is can be hard for them to adjust to. And sometimes it could be not great for the customers at the end of the day, the end customer that we're designing for. So I think this notion of time and how much you let things maturate before you then bring them to the world is something to be mindful of in the future. And part of that is, okay, well, that doesn't stop us from trying, and iteration and prototyping is a big part of how we work anyway. So I think that's what we'll probably see more of, is more iteration, more places for learning, more places to then take that learning and implement it again, like more cycles, more of these design loops, so that we're never taking 3 or 5 potential ideas and trying to get it to one. It's never that tournament bracket situation. It's always, let's start with these 5 and then recombine them in different ways. And oh, here comes a 6th, and then recombining those. And this process, you could easily just do that once and think like, here we go. But I do imagine in the future, there's just so much more to learn, and to make sure there are aspects we're not leaving out, that we might have to do more of these cycles together in the future.
Now I have an interesting question.
Oh, now you do? No.
Think about 2030. Innovation will be the new normal. Maybe that's the platform that anyone can produce, just prototype something, implement, apply, or sell it. Anyone. What IDEO is doing that?
Well, we're doing it too. Anyone's doing it.
Or maybe you operate the platform.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the great part about being attached to this company and this work for all these many years is that you see the change over time of us being one of a few places to go to help with this work, and then to see it infused within organizations themselves. It's actually awesome and gratifying. Like, I'm in a role where I have to say goodbye to designers who go to these companies to do those kinds of things on their own. And there's a part of that where it could be really like, oh no, I'm losing my best designer. And the other part of me is like, that's so awesome, because they're going to do this thing at that company that really needs it. So it's and there's a lot of work to do out in the world. There's a lot of problems to solve. So I actually really love seeing more of this happening. We, of course, because we've been doing it for so long, our version of it is, like I said, it's never the same. It's always quite different and bespoke depending on the challenge that we're taking on. And we have the expertise to know how to do that. And when you haven't practiced it for as long as we have, you sometimes get a different version of it. So I hope we're designing right along with everybody. And like you said, potentially being the platform by which they do it. I like that.
So you often talk about the diverse team at IDEO, what do you think in 10 years from now are new disciplines which are part for your organization, which are not part of your organization today?
Yeah. We have so many different disciplines now at IDEO that, you know, of course, are in the applied design areas like you know, interaction design, industrial design, graphic design, of course. But, you know, we have been growing disciplines in business design for many years, data science in the last several years, organizational designers, systems designers. It really just continues to grow, especially work that in the more public sector, having that expertise. So, you know, I imagine those newer disciplines growing, and then newer ones coming in. You know, I think some of the work that we're doing around working with coalitions and having people with expertise in doing that is something that we'll probably see more of in the future, because we're very, very interested in working with our end consumers, not for them, that they're a part of this design process, and having the expertise in-house to build those coalitions, to know how to take in these different constituents, part of, you know, the ecosystems that we work in, and let them be the ones driving the change and coming up with the ideas. That takes a certain kind of role. You're designing facilitation, you're designing convenings, you're designing coalitions, and that's something that we do now that I can imagine growing more so in the future. Yeah, I'm curious. What kinds of disciplines are you hearing out in the world? Because you're also.
I bring them now into the discussion because I had two great questions in the audience.
Oh, okay.
And they add, and that links me maybe to my point. How do you think about AI or about cobots working together with you? Yeah. Maybe you have a digital muse who's close to you, talking to you.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely come from a place of technology being a tool to support the work that humans are doing rather than replacing. You know, it sounds like you're more asking, is there a co-pilot situation by which, yeah, they're not leading or driving it, but maybe supporting it in a more like a sophisticated, more significant way. I still can imagine that for things that become more routine or that feel like they can be what's the word I'm looking for, like that surfaces data and information, and that tries to kind of give us something that's more binary. Like, again, those like answers of that humans can do, but what humans can do best is to find those nuances, the in-between stuff. So I can imagine a version of having those tools at my disposal much more easily, and the surfaces of them being much more reachable and easily accessible than maybe they are today, that the intelligence behind them is more reliable, and that is humane in the kind of data that they're giving forward. But I don't imagine myself talking to my robot friend in 10 years. I know, but you know, we'll see. I guess there's just a part of that I guess, yeah, it's the humanity of it that I want to rely on versus the kind of tool that the technology is.
So thinking about the next generation graduating talents in and I think in 10 years, in 2030, 70% of the entire white collars are 30 years or younger. So, and they have a so different perspective to work, to society, like maybe we both. So how you attract these talents?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the work that they want to do first and foremost, right? And if they're attracted to a place that gives them a chance to work on a wide variety of problems to solve, and the problems that we are trying to solve speak to their values, that to me is where we align really well with the kind of designer that we want to hire. That work exists for us, and that's work that we're doing. And you know, I think everybody who is able to touch on a personal passion through the work that they can do is definitely wanting to be in those places. So we know that about I would say our younger set of designers. They're very value driven. They want to make a difference. They want to be a part of the conversation, and they have a lot of wherewithal to do it. You know, I love the kind of not bravado, but the kind of confidence, I guess, that I see in a lot of our younger designers to step up and to try things on and to have hard conversations and to be a part of making real change. And I think having work that satisfies those kind of needs is really where we see people being attracted to what we're doing. And, you know, also being a company that's living by its values itself. It can't just be the work you're doing at the outside.
Like
right. Yeah. It has to really be honest and true and authentic to how you work as an organization internally. And to feel that in your everyday.
I have another question that links the today and the tomorrow. Before we had the talk, in advance, 5 minutes before we had the talk, we talk about how long your office will be closed in San Francisco, what you decide, and we talk about Europe. So connectivity is a critical driver for economic growth and prosperity. And in the past, these kind of clusters was like cities, like these IDEO capitals like Singapore, Tel Aviv, San Francisco. Do you think that in the future there are alternatives in terms of connectivity clusters, not as a physical space or like a city?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see that today already. I think that that the kind of communities that are formed through connectivity are super rich and diverse in terms of space and people and attitudes and mindsets, and that it's sort of like there's all these different slices through our culture and community that you see that I think would only grow more in the future, which is there's your local centricity. So what does it mean to be connected to the people that I am a part of in a city, and therefore in the workplace in this city? That's one kind of cut through. There's the like special interests, or the things that I am passionate about, and those hold no bounds in terms of location, and that I can instantly be connected to and learn from and contribute to. Like that's a different slice. There's even then like the practice that I come from, the discipline, the craft that I'm attached to, and that's also something that I would benefit from both locally and globally, and having means of which to connect in those different ways. I think that's a big part of how I think we need to work in the future. Is what is the primacy? Like what is the reason for being when we're in a location together, and what does that serve? And what are the things that help us stretch outside of that because of who we can reach and who can be a part of it? And having these kind of different cuts or ad hoc groups or connectivity in that way, to me, is really, really important. I don't think it comes from just one source. I think it really actually is like the right place for the right thing. what is it that we need to be in this location for, and what are we going to do together, because that fits it. So being, yeah, more fit for purpose, to me is really what we should be thinking a lot about, and being open to, and really like embracing, like there doesn't need to be such a tight control on location when it comes to things like knowledge sharing, like passion building, like problem solving.
Okay, I want to come now to the end. It was so great to talk to you, because you're so passionate, and even at Zoom you can feel it. How passionate are you for your job and what you do? So what do you think? What gives you, or what is the fuel for your passion?
Oh wow. Well, I think one thing is that I get inspired by the people that I work with. That's what fuels a lot of this. And so then I'm really driven and motivated to give them the kinds of things, like I said earlier, that they're so excited to work on. Like that really does drive me day to day. And yeah, seeing the things that they come up with, like I'm always so impressed. They're such better designers than I ever was. So I feel lucky to still get to learn from them, and you know, and bring whatever I can to their work as well. But yeah, this is a small little thing, but maybe worth mentioning. You know, 4 years ago, when the news became kind of hard to listen to, I needed to shut it out. I needed to like not listen to the news anymore. And that became this weird transition point for me around my own passions changing from wanting to be informed about every piece of the news to not then listening to it at all. But what happened was that space got filled, and some people got really into podcasts or went really deep into news, but I got really into music. And so music became this re-emerged passion of mine. It's something that I used to be much more into in earlier days. And from that, from really reconnecting with music again, going to more shows, listening to whatever came my way, I got really excited by what is it at IDEO? Like, what are people listening to? And here's this huge community of really creative people. They all have interesting personal passions of their own. What if I could learn more from them? And we use each other a lot. Like, hey, who knows something about this? Like, there's a lot of that knowledge sharing internally. But I started a Slack channel that's about what are we consuming, and it can be any kind of media really. But music has been the one that's kind of stuck the most. And so, gosh, this is pre-COVID, a few months before COVID actually, and it's been nice to have it as something that we've used throughout. Which is that every week I collect all the music that's been shared and put it up on a playlist on Spotify. So if you want to listen to what IDEO is listening to, I can share the link. But it's been so fun to see like this passion of mine connected to passions of others, and that we're creative about it. Like, we're creating something together. It has nothing to do with our work, right? Like, rarely does it. Certainly some of the songs are reflective of the times. But it's so nice to be able to, sure, partner, managing director. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I get to be a part of this group of people who love music as well, and to share that passion with them. So I know it's a different kind of passion maybe than what you're referring to, but it's so nice to be in a community of which that gets to be enriched.
Thank you so much. We learned so much about you in person, about IDEO, about the job as a designer. To the audience, I also recommend to you, because we have the recording on one side, on the other side, we also have the graphic recording. So in 1 week, we will publish the graphic recording from this talk. And by the way, I will never forget your story when your colleagues knock at your door. And you've seen each other not so long. Ooh, that was really interesting. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And stay healthy. I hope to meet you in person at the Bay Area hopefully less than in 12 months from now.
Same here.
So good evening to all of you, and have a good day to the rest in the West. So hope to see you soon. Bye-bye. Take care, Rafa.